But we are starting the Ways and Means meeting Wednesday, April 30th, 2025, 6:30 PM. Do you have some budget discussion meetings? I'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify this guy at this time. All right. We'll do a roll call of members. Counselor Tronza, that's me, yep. Counselor Bottomley. Here. Counselor Mastero.
Here.
Counselor Brown.
Here.
Counselor Perry.
Here.
Perfect. We have full quorum, full council, actually, full subcommittee. We have no approval of minutes this month. And we will entertain public comment. Did anyone sign up on that?
Here.
All right. Riveting group, does anyone online want to raise their hand and say something in public comment? Going once. Going twice. Sold to the man in the blue shoes. So we're here to discuss some budgetary stuff. We've invited Franklin County Technical School here. There's some scheduling mishaps, but we're welcome to have you, as always. And so whatever you would like to present, take it away.
Okay, I think someone needs to give me permission to share the screen. I believe so. Yeah, turn sharing on. Posted and allowing share, so that's what it says on that thing. So when I press share,
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
so I might have to go through the.
Right there.
Oh, share. Oops, I missed it. This one.
Yep, that one
Sorry,
right there.
just a note. Oh,
Make a co-host.
wait, not Doug,
Oh, is it not John here? Sorry.
Morales.
Yeah, you have to make me the co-host.
Oh, Roland Martin.
Yeah.
Jarrett, meeting's on you.
Now, if John has anything to share, he can do it now. So.
I am totally good on not taking on that responsibility. Thank you much. I trust all
right.
of you,
Okay, thank you.
too, so please enjoy.
I have to log back on. And now it's making me log back on, so I apologize.
It's okay.
That's all right. I was waiting.
Fans.
They're not fans.
We call them fans.
Okay, and then I think someone allowed.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. I'm back in. Now I think, I don't like.
Still a guess. I have to.
Still a guess, correct.
This is why I never got glasses, because then there's expectations like you know things.
Okay, now you're co-host.
Thank you. That's better.
Yay.
Everything up. All right, sounds good, and I'll try to mediate my way through. Okay, thank you very much. I'm Rick Martin. I'm School Superintendent Director at Franklin County Technical School. I'm going to give a brief overview on how our budget impacts the Greenfield assessment. So I'm going to mainly focus on Greenfield, not our other 19 member towns. The budget book that we sent out to you, if you look at it through your computer or electronic device, it's much easier to navigate. But it comes with a table of contents. You just click on what you're looking for and it will take you to whatever page that's on. So I'm gonna start with the sources of funding, which is always, the best, that's always the easiest part of it for us. So our sources of funding is how we get our money. And we usually show a 5-year trend. And if I go through for Greenfield, the per pupil expenditures, I click on that link, it will take me to Greenfield. Prior to this meeting, I did highlight it in yellow. You had an opportunity to take a look, so we can dive right to it. I'll just shrink the screen. I know, if I can just move this, yeah, there we go. Get that on my site. You'll see that from last year to this year, it increased by 3 students. And your per pupil expenditures are 9,669, which is about 3,000 below our average, which you'll see down here in the bottom right-hand corner at 12,489. You can see some towns pay upward of 19,000 per student. So that went up, based on the number of students, from 3, and I'm going to show you where we currently are with Franklin, I mean with Greenfield. So the assessment for Greenfield would be this number right here, that the town, that the city would be voting on, the 1,345,760. We also, when we look at this from Greenfield students at Franklin County Tech, this is an interesting little chart. It shows you right here, the 76 students coming from the Greenfield Middle High School. And everybody else, we have 135 students currently in the school, and everyone else comes from different areas. So that's something a lot of people aren't usually aware of. When they come from homeschool, they come from charter schools, they come from other school choice venues, like those students that never set foot in the Greenfield Middle School. They'll come to us through Frontier or Turner's, wherever they were the school choice. So we show where they came from. So that's an important chart, so you get an idea. So from the middle high school, we got 76, and everyone else is from there. Then it kind of breaks it down over here in our current application pool. We have, these are the Greenfield students coming to us next year. So right now we have 24 coming to us next year. So that will be down a little bit. 58 applied. We don't know how many wanted to confirm, but usually that seems like a bad ratio. Usually we have that a lot tighter. So we would have to do a deep dive on that end of it, because you have plenty of room in your quota to take those students. So we'll look into that, but that's 24 coming from Greenfield. So I would imagine the assessment next year will dip back below the 135 number. So next year's assessment will probably be, it would be lower than the current school year. So we like to track kind of where they're coming from. And when we look at the, I'm going to jump right to the debt service here. These I got a lot of other fun charts. If you can't sleep at night, got plenty of charts for you to take a look at. I'm going to go right to the debt service. This is that old windows, doors, paving and roofing project that we did about 9 years ago through the MSBA. And that's the equalized valuation, comes out every 2 years. It just came out. So there's Greenfield for the 50,000. So on top of the 1.3 million, there's another 50,000 goes towards the capital. So that's pretty standard. And all our 19 member towns and cities are broken down on the right-hand column based on the equalized valuation formula. And so whenever you're on one of these charts, when you're scrolling through the budget book online, you just go back to whatever, either the table of contents or the sources of funding, and you'll be able to get to where you need to go. This, I just did the debt service because I was already down in that chart area. So the next one is chapter 78. There's a whole descriptor in every one of the places that you click, you'll find a descriptor of what it is. And then how it links up to what the state says it is. And you can do a lot of research on your own for even your own city or town. When I look at the cherry sheet, this is the important part here. This is what they give us, and they update our cherry sheet from the Department of Ed right here. That will tell us how much aid we're getting from Chapter 70 or from any town. And if you wanted to find your town or our town, I like to always be transparent in the budget in order for you to navigate and find out where we got these numbers from, so you don't think we just printed them out. This will take you right to the state's website, all regional schools. I scroll down to Franklin County Technical School. I click submit, and the number I just showed you, the 6198 is right here. Regional transportation, when we developed the budget and got it approved, was $882,000 of a $1.3 million to be reimbursed. Doesn't sound to me like that's 90% like they promised. They did up it a little bit, and the one that just came out to 916. But as you are well aware, the governor's final numbers don't come out to the end of July, so I don't know which way she'll vote on that when that happens. So that gives us a cherry sheet formula there. When I want to look at, go back to our sources of funding. So that's where we get these numbers from. There's our 6198, there's our 882,000 from regional transportation. To make up a difference for our transportation and to help keep our overall assessments reasonable, we have some students that come from us from non-member towns, and they get charged a significantly higher rate than the $9,000 plus from Greenfield. They get charged between 22 and 26,000 per student. We take that money, we apply it back to offset the next year's assessment out of our tuition revolving. So that's our non-member towns. We have a whole paragraph on that in here. And you have linkage to the Department of Ed to make sure that we're doing our job correctly with the appropriate guidelines. I go back to the sources of funding. And we have our pre-employment program. We pulled $50,000 out of. We have more students this year. For the last 3 years, we weren't able to pull any money out of that program. It's a self-contained for intellectual disabilities. And those are tuition students from all over the place. And we'll pull $50,000 to help offset other revenues for like surplus equipment. We are a VOTEC school, so equipment's always going in and out. We get rid of that surplus equipment as new equipment comes in. And we have excess and deficiencies to help offset the budget. I want to just show you real quickly, take less than 30 seconds to show you that number of 657,000. Where do we get it from? So we go on here, we click on, it should take us right to the state website, which it did. And I click to 2025, and let's get a preview. But the jurisdiction is here, Franklin County Tech. You can tell I've done this a few times. And there it is. So that's 657, 206. Okay, it's not on the screen. Maybe I can get it up through here. No, it's not on the screen. Okay, good point. But you see it here in house. Don't know why I didn't do that, but that's technology for you. So the 657, so that's 16 million. Now, how do we spend the money? That's the next screen, and that's basically your budget, right? So how we spent the money is the district leadership and administration jumped up a little bit, usually through, we did hire an assistant principal as well, and we kind of were able to cut back on one, but we have more students, so we needed some support there. Our biggest jump, and it will be in any school district with increased enrollment, is going to be instructional services. We're an HR industry. We rely on our teachers to support our students. So for example, instead of 2 electrical instructors, we needed 3. Instead of 2 auto tech teachers, we needed 3. Carpentry teachers, we have an outside house that we build every year for the community. We needed a 4th carpentry instructor to help work on that. So in all those cases, as our enrollment goes up, so does that. So that's our instructional services. I'm going to take you to, there's our regional transportation right here. That's might come up a little bit, but we got to catch up to 1.2, 1.3 million. Right now, you just saw the reimbursement, 882,000. So there's that gap that we try to close within our budget. The biggest hit that surprised all our towns, and it also surprised anyone belonging to the Hampshire Insurance Group, and you might have heard. So the Hampshire Insurance Group raised our insurance by 20%. And that meant this figure right here. So when you look on the screen, it went from 1.584 million to 1.775 million. So it jumped over $200,000, about $200,000. And we weren't ready for that because we've been doing this a long, long time. And our business manager has actually sat on that board. And it, you know, it might go up 2%, 3%. We had 0%. We once had, you know, last year it was 8%. We thought that was the end of it. And it went up 20%. So.
Did they say why?
Yeah, they had a lot of different reasons, different kinds of formulas that kind of go out there. There's new medications on the market. That's what I'll say about that. And they cost a lot more money. So that's kind of what they said. So I don't know if that's one big jump or if it's going to be another big jump next year. So we really have to watch our budget going into this next year, because if it's another 20% increase, it's going to handicap not just us, but every town I've been out to that's having the same problem. It's hitting the municipalities, the school districts, everybody. So then we have our typical insurances for retirees, non-employees, and those will go up accordingly. And then non-employee insurance, rental lease equipment. Here's one thing to pay attention to. The rental lease equipment, these two line items right here. All right, you'll see these two line items tell a story. Our story is that we had a Siemens project and that we paid $5 million for new HVAC boilers, roofs, new HVAC rooftop units, new boilers and energy efficient systems, now 17 years ago. Well, that was costing us $500,000 a year. And we also were in the process back a few years back of an MSBA application. So we said, well, if we can just go out to our towns and our cities and our members and say, let's continue that 500,000 and throw it into capital stabilization. And then we don't have to go out to the towns twice, one for a new project and one for a feasibility study. So we went to all our towns over the last several years, and we moved the money from the $500,000, which now came zero because now we're done with that. We moved it into capital stabilization, and we are just paying off the feasibility study. We are currently in the design phase of a new project. We do not know what the estimated cost of that is yet, because they're going to decide whether or not we take our existing building and renovate it, or whether we renovate it and add on, whether that's not worthy and they do a new building, who knows? We're in that kind of process for the next year or so. I'm sure by this time next year, we'll have a much better idea on what that would look like. So, but for this year, we're only taking 238,000 because we basically paid off the feasibility study. Now we're moving into the capital stabilization. I believe that may not be enough. And we'll have to deal with that when that comes. And the reason why I'm saying that is because,
Oh, sorry.
and the reason why I'm saying that is because we have old Federal Pacific switchgear, electrical switchgear, and our light's been going on and off. So we knew if one of those went off and we didn't have a standby unit, we would be out of power until they could manufacture a new one, which could take 2 months. So we weren't going to risk it. So we got together with our capital planning board and we purchased a new one, had it on standby, about $100,000. 2 weeks later, it went out. 24 hours later, we were back with full power. We would have been 2 months with no kids in school if it was anything else. We have 11 of those switchgear. So we went out and got a few more just in case. And we, sure enough, about 3 months after that, another one went. So we're in this constant battle to try to maintain I think the building looks beautiful on the outside. It's just the internal structures are just caving on us. So that money will probably go quick, that 238,000. How we spend the money and how that gets explained, if you just click on any of these columns, it takes you to a full paragraph on how we spent the money, what's it used for, all the outside links, how we can use it, all that stuff. So that just gives you, again, if you can't sleep at night, you can always have fun with this book. And then the debt service, we explained earlier, school choice tuition. We had one student from a member town that's going to Monty Tech. We have to pay the school choice tuition for that. And then we had the OPED. So there it is. So we have 16.168 million. And we have 16.168 million, and that's how we receive our money. That's how we spend it. So that's in the short, that's a little synopsis. I thought it'd take 10, 15 minutes, but I'll here to show you or answer any questions. I probably have the questions answered in my budget book, so I can scroll to whatever you need to see.
Mike, you missed it. They had a 20% increase in their health insurance.
Surprise.
Yeah.
No surprise. Seems like it covered it though. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Are there any questions? Consider there any other questions? Mine was a comment.
Very thorough, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Yeah, thank you.
Always appreciate the presentation. That was
Oh,
great.
it's all right there. You can research your stuff. That's the fun part about it. I actually like it. That's something wrong.
Who designed that?
I did.
You did the whole thing?
Yeah, I told you there's something wrong. I'll stop the share. You actually have it in electronic form.
Love to see that.
It's very impressive.
We send out a hard copy and the electronic copy.
Oh, no, I know.
Yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Fun and meat and potatoes of all this. Sorry, Minnesota, if I messed that one up, but
Yeah.
Maya, would you like to present us with your brief presentation?
All right, Michael, Steve and I are gonna do this together.
What?
Yeah.
Here, let me move over.
We didn't invite him.
Here, how about-
Not reasonably anticipated.
I'm sorry, co-host. Stephen made a few slides. I'm just going to say that our budget increased for the same reasons that Rick Martin did. It's a $67.9 million. $67,925,000 budget. And, you know, the biggest increases to it were health insurance, and retirement. And you added new employee. Now the city pays 80% of the health insurance. So for each new employee, if they have a family plan, it's 28,400 a year that we're paying for that employee. In addition to the salary, it's a +1. It's 20,500. So it's a significant increase. So, but I'm gonna let Stephen.
Okay. So we just have a few slides. We're not gonna get too terribly in depth with this, but we will hit the highlights here. So.
Or the low ones.
Or the low ones, yeah, exactly. So this is the budget overview. So what we're looking at here is our total budget at the bottom, 67.9 million, and compare that to FY25, 64.8 million. So you see our two major expenses right there, retirement and health insurance. That is the retirement assessment that has gone up by 462,000. And health insurance has gone up by $1.8 million. The operating budget only went up by 791,000. Plus, departments have reduced expenses by about $500,000. So everyone, total, yeah. So everyone worked very, very hard to reduce their expenses in line items where they could had some discretion and were able to reduce in that area. So the budget only went up by about 4.7%, but you'll see that the 1.8 million plus the 462, that's 75% of our increase right there. The rest of the increase is being COLA as well as step increases associated with collective bargaining. So that's kind of the snapshot of this is essentially that's where our money is going this year. Health insurance, retirement, and collective bargaining. This is just a quick overview of the process. The mayor met with every single department head to discuss their budget priorities. Department heads were advised to budget conservatively. And then that was entered into Munis. Then myself and the mayor, we review the budget and make adjustments where needed. Again, the department budgets were reduced during this process. And every single entity in the state has said you need to budget conservatively and reduce costs where you can. Because a little bit later on, we'll talk about 26 and beyond, which is really the crux here, because that's something that we really worry about going forward. So beyond FY26, we already have eliminated BRIC, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, $100,000 hazard mitigation study. So that grant has been eliminated for us. The thing about that grant, the mitigation study is required to apply for other grants. So it's the gatekeeper in order to apply for other grants if they are available. EPA is in the process of being greatly downsized. So I'm not sure where that's going to go. The elimination of the DOE, that will affect school grants. And the way that the earmarking is going right now, the federal government will have a lot of discretion on where they want to place the money in their priorities. And then our community block grants have been cut by about 500,000. So we're looking at, this is the beginning of the cuts in grants, which will have an effect going forward. Bond rating. Bond rating is usually important. Over the past 2.5, 3 years, we've increased bonding by close to $25 million, almost $30 million, which that's a lot of money for a town like this. Over the next few years, we are going to have to convert long-term debt and have that either refinanced or make that into long-term debt. Currently, our rates are at 4%. A 1% increase in the rate will cost an additional $100,000 to $200,000 per year in interest expense. So $100,000 to $200,000 per year times 15 years. That's a heck of a lot of money going forward. So we need to be careful about that, and we need to pay close attention to our bond rating. This is a snapshot of the bond rating and how we are planning to deal with the bond rating. We want to build up our stabilization funds. We want to limit new borrowing, pay off existing debt, and control overall operational budget increases going forward. So that's what it says debt per capita is debt service per capita. So when you look at Greenfield, Deerfield, Amherst, Northampton, East Hampton, and North Adams, you'll see Greenfield on a per capita basis is about $1,000 more than the nearest local debt service per capita. About 7.5% of our budget goes to debt service every single year, as compared to 3%, East Hampton at 8% and 2.2% for North Adams. I chose North Adams because it's a similarly situated demographically city compared to Greenfield. And as you can see, Greenfield has outstanding debt that's considerably more than any of those other communities. And our bond rating is AA minus, which is at the threshold of excellent to kind of middle of the road. So if we go down, we're going down an entire category rather than just going down the excellent bond rating. The other ones, AA plus, AAA, AA plus, and AA minus is actually better than AA plus. Believe it or not. So I don't know how they come up with this, but that's the case. And we are continuing to embrace creative solutions and utilizing funding. We use revolving funds for 2 firefighters, 300,000 for the ladder trucks. So we have these balances. We're going to need to use them. Also, we're looking at consolidating resources, shared services, shared staff, and most importantly, limit new hires. Like the mayor said, a family plan for the city costs $28,000. And, you know, if it goes up another 10, 15, 20% next year, it'll be even more for that. And that's really it as far as the budget goes. So, you know, we've hit the highlights. We've hit what is the budget? What are the drivers of the budget? And bond rating, and what are we doing to try to conserve money in the future? So, you know, any questions, welcome to it.
Yeah. So I guess that second column, that says 2020, or second row, is 2024 debt percent budget.
Yep.
And us and East Hampton are much higher. What is that? That's the debt percent to our total operating budget?
Yeah. How much we pay in debt service to our total operating budget.
Right. And so next door to us, Deerfield, that's Rich City, or town, AA2. Is that better?
That is actually, I have a handy chart here if you want to see that. So Moody's, S&P, and Fitch.
So AA2 is like an AA.
Yep.
Right.
This is like so much more backwards than. I mean, if you're in like classes and you're in like the AAA class, that's like lower than the AA class.
Exactly.
It's like the fewer A's you have, the higher you just get an A or an A plus. It just seems in that comparison, like, I mean, obviously we're carrying, us and East Hampton are carrying a lot of debt
Yes.
in comparison to our budget.
Yes.
Is there any kind of breakdown? I know it's not on that chart, but is there any kind of breakdown of like what the difference in those interest rates, like in those percentages would be if we were to drop even like say one step? I know it's going to be a significant amount of money, but is it hard to, is it fair across the board? Meaning we have what you had 5 or 6 towns on that?
Yeah. Let me go back up to those.
And so I know their percentage of budget is due to their thing, but like, so if we're sitting at an A minus and East Hampton at an A plus, and you're saying that A minus is actually better, we're paying presumably a lower interest rate. Even though our debt per capita is higher, we're paying a lower interest rate on our 65 million than they're paying on their 41.
Exactly. So see, and that's actually a really good comparison because you're looking at East Hampton at $41 million
Right.
outstanding, but a tier lower than us. And the debt service as a percentage of budget is a little bit higher. So that kind of gives you a gauge at where we would be if, I would say our debt service as a percentage of budget, and this is just me guessing, if we were to go down that one tier, we'd probably add 2% to that debt service as a percentage of budget.
And Northampton is actually better because it's triple.
Exactly.
That's the upper echelon, right?
Yeah, triple A is the best you can.
Okay. I mean, they make you wait for 3 hours to change a tire, but cool. Cool. And so that would be the next step up for us, correct? A minus goes to triple A.
I believe A
Well, the
minus.
A plus, and then.
Yeah.
A double A.
Yeah, so, and that's my worry is that we're at the cusp between high grade and upper medium grade.
Okay.
So that could have a fairly detrimental, because we're going down a tier.
So East Hampton's actually at a higher tier than we are, correct? Weren't they AA plus? I thought it was going like backwards.
I'm sorry, is it? S&P. Oh, yeah, AA plus.
They actually have a better interest rate than we do.
Yeah, they have a little.
So we got a couple steps we could move.
Yep. There's too many letters.
So
Yeah.
we have not, since I've been in, we have not borrowed for anything new other than the I think. This year it was just 500,000 for I. In the past, even outside of the building projects, it was, I believe, the kind of standard operating procedure to borrow like 4 million a year at the time.
500? I thought it was 200 this year for I.
No, we're gonna go up, maybe, you might be right, but there was almost nothing that we were borrowing for. We tried to pay for everything we could because it really is, we're really close. And the more that we can put into regular stabilization, we may actually think even transferring something from capital into stabilization because they really seem to look at what you have there.
What you were talking about other than the building projects. what
Oh,
you
yes,
just said.
so that annually, we were borrowing 4 million a year
For
for
what?
different things,
Okay.
different things that people needed.
Yeah.
And they really are needs. They're not all things just that people want. There's, every department needs new vehicles, parts of new buildings, or, fire alarms, things happen. But, the best thing that you can do. And many municipalities do that. They have a fund and they're trying to pay as you go, other than for a building project. I mean, of course, you're not gonna pay for a building outright.
What's I-9? What did you say?
INI is the infiltration. It's like what goes into our water pipes. From the outside, from them deteriorating. I'm not Marlo, but it's relatively bad. It's what gets into what you don't want to get into the system.
I hate to bring up the topic. But, I've been very concerned about the transportation of the public schools. And I was curious to know if you had discovered anything or had anything to report regarding that.
I actually asked specifically information about, transportation, who you are transporting in schools, because we do two things now. We have a firm that, Cosmetics that we pay to transport our own children daily to school. I actually was not wrapping my brain around that. Then we have we bought buses and have bus drivers that drive many of the students for out of district tuition to different schools. Usually they're children with special needs and they're going to other communities and we drive. So I asked for a breakdown of that because I'm just curious. I don't have all the answers on that. We'll talk more about it later, but I think we transport about, say, 17 or 18 Greenfield students to the schools that they're going to. And we transport 12 students from other cities and towns to their school. And then 9 of our children with special needs are transported by other services, by other agencies. So whether or not that whole something is cost effective, I would say, I don't know that because I don't know what is charged for that. But I do know that we're paying, because I see the warrants, we're paying a significant amount to transport some of our own students still. And I think that's something that definitely should be, in my opinion, it's not my budget, but should be reevaluated to make sure that it's, because we're still, with all of that, and I think you heard that, and then we're paying for the 14, 16 employees and all of their things, and yet still we're doing this. So whether or not that's cost effective. Any other questions?
I have a question. So we're not fully taxing to Proposition 2.5, right? And does that, like, what was the thinking for that? And then also, does that mean next year, the starting amount that we're taxing, like, it's lower, so it impacts the future? Like,
So other than the past 2 years, if you went through all of the budgets, we aren't always at the ceiling. There's always room between you and the ceiling. The first year when I came in, or the last year when we were doing it, it was like at zero. There was like absolutely no room. This is not a good thing. It's
No,
not
sir.
zero. That's nothing to be proud of,
okay,
that you're like a little bit away from the ceiling. It's not something you think like, oh, that's great. And if you did have room, it's not like you try to spend everything to get that. We actually made an effort, because I'm concerned about the taxpayers, we put extra things into, the final budget, like as in using, I forget what the figure was from pension stabilization. Was that like 200,000 or something from pension stabilization that we put into the middle? We again took $350,000 from parking receipts, where they used a lower number before. We didn't have to do that, but the more that you put into it, it's going to reduce the overall. And then on the local receipts, the Department of Revenue, they do everything very conservatively, wouldn't you say?
Very concerned.
Yes, they'll like, look at this, and your local receipts could actually be much higher. They wouldn't want you to, their suggestion would probably be 4%, like to increase by 4%, because you don't actually know what it's going to be. And we looked together for the last couple of years, and I said, we should go higher on that, because we're going to take that in. The taxpayers are going to take it, and it's looking that way, although we didn't bring that. It's looking that way, because it's April 30th, that we're better on our receipts. So we estimated at 8% on the local receipts, to put that into the middle, which actually Councilor Brown, gets you a little bit away from the ceiling, which is a good thing. Yeah, I went back. I think that had come up before. So I went back and I thought, we're always like a couple million away. It's no, did I explain it?
Yeah, we're starting to create that gap between the ceiling and to what we're actually charging the taxpayers, which again, it goes to the bond rating, because the bonding companies look at that, and they want to make sure you're not spending every single penny as fast as it comes in.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that also leaves wiggle room
Yes.
for the rest of the year. I mean, we're projecting budget for full year before we even get to it. So if there are, amended orders or whatever, or requests that need to come in, we're already at the ceiling, like we got nothing. We can't do anything about it. So we're screwed. So it gives us wiggle room to not crest that, especially that 2.5%, because there's no way of getting like a special election override. When you really need it, it's just like, it's not gonna be ordered, and that's gonna cost money, just to hold that special election,
Yeah, and I cut that. Kathy said, if we have that, and I said, yes, we'll find it, because I thought it's not planned for an extra one right now. So let's take that, whatever it was, I don't really remember what the figure was. Let's take that $10,000 out, because it looked like we're gonna have an extra election. But just even tonight, what Stephen was showing with the community block grant thing, that was the first that although I was supposed to review that thoroughly.
Oh, that's
I just must admit that I missed that part, so I just throw myself under the bus. the community block grant, that we were down 500,000. I'm like, oh no, I didn't know that. We have a department, you know, our economic development that is funded by community block grant funding. We have 3 people there. You know, one is fully funded by block grant funding. One is, you know, and the other 2 are in part funded by community block grant funding. That's horrifying because we really need those folks. So, you know, we are doing everything we can and telling people if they have anything to do with the grant to ask as quickly as they can to get that here, because it is a little bit of a frightening time.
And another question on the Proposition 2.5, like, so that 2.5% increase. So now for next fiscal year, we're starting, it's based on what we just.
It builds on top of it, yeah.
It does, and at the time when you estimate, there is some estimating that's done as well. Because we don't actually know what our new growth is going to be for this year. We don't know that until mid-November. That's when the tax rate is actually set. And I didn't understand that as much the first year or so on the council. You know, you look at this and we provide a budget and there's an estimate of what the tax rate might be, but it's actually all down, it's fascinating. It's all down to the wire on November. It's around November 20th. It was before you were here, and there was this whole chart of things that they're looking at. And one of the things they're looking at very closely, they said that, was our enterprise funds. So we don't actually need to come to council. This is kind of interesting because I don't know why. But I read it. We don't come to you for the water and sewer rate increases if it's 10% or less. That's written somewhere in some law or in the code. I don't actually know where it is, but it's there. And that will probably, you'll have to make a decision on that by July 1, because water and sewer rates, you need to give folks notice 6 months in advance. So they would, you know, but that will be going up again because they would not certify our tax rates unless our enterprise funds were all meeting their revenue expectations. So, yeah. But anyways, that was the part I was answering with the 2.5 thing, no really closer at November 15th.
Are we playing catch up on that, water and sewer rates?
Yes, and this is another thing that, this is fascinating to me. We do better with that when there's a drought. I don't know why that is. I think we're using more water. We're using more water when there's a drought. So Marlo had said, I wouldn't worry about that. We're in a drought. So I guess I'm glad that we're in a drought, except that because we're in a drought, now we're getting more brush fires. Yeah, that's not a good thing. So there's a good and a bad side. I think the fire department was out today with that and had 4 of them the other day. So there you go. But we're keeping an eye on that, and that's looking better. But they're very firm. They're rather stern. So are the bond people.
Mhm.
I was never been on a bond call. They're quite stern.
They're
They
very
want all
serious
the
people, yes.
information. And they don't have any wiggle room. We thought it might have been happening this year.
Mhm.
And then they're like, well, you have a 1 in 3 chance. So I just want everybody to know that that's not a lot of fun.
Maybe a dumb question. I've been here 4 years. I should know this answer, but, so our enterprise funds always balance out, right? It's always balanced out at 0. Like what they're going to take in, what they're going to expend, and balance out at 0 when we budget it. Do surpluses from those stay in that enterprise, correct? They never turn back to general.
They don't turn back the general.
That's what I thought,
They
but-
retained earnings.
Right,
If they're actually doing, and if you can correct me if I'm making any mistakes on that, but that's how they get retained earnings. If they have a
Right.
good year, they had a bad year last year,
right,
and they went down significantly. Marlo had done a great job on that.
right.
And, you know, he was up like around $1 million, and then we were down to 100,000 in one. and a huge drop on the other. And, yeah, so.
The reason I say that is like a lot of those, like, that makes sense. It's the retained earnings that come in. A lot of those end up getting expended capital wise, a lot of times, right? That's a lot of the orders we'll see is, oh, we're gonna pay for this out of, the retained earnings from, the ambulance fund or, the sewer water enterprise funds. So what if we didn't? I guess. I know that we would have to take it, if we wanted capital expenditures for those departments, it would then have to come out of, general city funds. But where would that money go? I guess, what are the limitations of how you can use the retained earnings? Can an enterprise put that back into the general fund out of choice, or is it locked in? It can only be used for that?
It's locked in. It's the statutory structure of the
Right.
enterprise fund.
And they can't use it for, I guess we want to say, like, operating of that department. It has to be used as almost like a special interest.
Yeah, it's kind of like a special interest fund, you may, and I'm not sure about this, I'd have to look into it. You may be able to use it to reduce rates at some point.
Right.
But it has to be for the benefit of that fund.
Right. Okay.
There's several people in water that are paid out of water and sewer. And those enterprise funds went up significantly because of the, insurance costs. One person was added in water that was under the water enterprise fund. And, you do watch that as you're going along. He has a whole lot of expenses and some capital things that are under that. And the rates are supposed to reflect what goes in there. So,
Well, that's the idea, is to, like, balance us and not like jacking rates to, it's kind of the way that I don't like the free cash thing, right? Like, I don't want my sewer rates to go up so that there can be this whole crap load of retained earnings. I'd rather you charge me when you need it.
yeah. And
So to
our
speak.
water and sewer are significantly less
Yeah.
than other municipalities.
Absolutely.
I don't know what the numbers are, but I did at one point. They're not in my head right now.
They are,
Yeah, they are.
which is good because their taxes are so much higher.
Well, but actually, this is how I feel about that. There's something that you could do with the water.
Yeah.
Like you can use, you can, for the most part, most people have some control over what you use for water.
Mhm.
Right? And your sewer is dependent upon what your water use. So it is something that, even if you have kids, you can tell them you got a 3-minute shower, whatever it is. I came from a big family. Many of the time we were told FHB, family hold back, right?
Very good.
Maybe shower.
Maybe
Yeah,
so.
right. How many minutes is that?
Oh, you
30 seconds?
Yeah. Get under, you turn the water on, turn it off, soap up, turn the water on, rinse off, and that's it, get out.
Next.
Right. Yeah. There you go. I think we have to be thinking like that to survive. I talked to Senator Comerford after the Earth Day. And it's like the communities that are going to be successful are going to have to be thinking about doing things in new and innovative ways. It's changing. You heard Rick Martin tonight with his going up 20%. If we continue to do everything exactly the same way that we are without consolidating services, seeing what we can do to get it inside our community or with another community, the people that are thinking ahead of the time, those communities are going to do better. Everybody's in trouble right now. And, we have had other municipalities reach out to us. Don't be afraid of those. These are good things. For anything that we can consolidate and share services within departments that you could put together, that is a good thing. Change is very difficult, but those of us who don't change, they're going to be in trouble.
to some extent, when it comes to, sports, I think even some of the spring program, we are, regionalized with the other school districts as far as the sports teams go. Hockey teams, it's 6 or 8 schools combined. You know, there's no more Greenfield Turner's football games because they're all one. So maybe we think about the academic end of that as well, as far as regionalization goes. Because it's getting very expensive.
Yeah, it's not looking. We have to just be forward thinking and talking. Any other question? I did send to you, because I actually, that FERCog question, I sent everybody something today. I don't know if Tammy sent it out. Did you get anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I asked Mark Snow because I thought.
Oh, yeah.
You asked Mark
Yes.
Snow sent something?
Yeah.
So, I actually didn't understand that myself. And so those inspectors, I thought our inspectors were doing that. We have 2 electricians and a plumber who are all fabulous. But you can't inspect your own work, which I didn't know that till today. That actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Nobody should inspect their own work. And, they do all the inspections, and although we pay about 100,000, which was somebody's question last year, we are even at the 3/4 mark. We're ahead at pulling money in from those inspections, and I didn't realize that we get gas inspections as well. I don't think I even knew that somebody inspected gas, but I'm glad that they do. That we have a significant amount of revenue from that, and it's better than last year. It's gonna be over the 100,000 that we paid to the FERCog, so I wanted to just answer that.
Circle back to the general fund.
Does that go to the general fund? Yes. So we spend 100,000 and then we're probably getting, it was like 120.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's absolutely true.
20 grand.
$20 grand, man.
Any questions? We could have done 55 slides, but we thought, let's just.
No, yeah. Less is more.
Brief presentation.
Right. I know. Yeah. Sit over here. Is that-
All right, well, thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good times. So our motions are obviously laid out there. We don't have to really go through the motions. So people, I guess, maybe we do to talk about it. So I guess the first motion is to appropriate $67,925,100 for the FY 2026 general fund budget. City council vote to appropriate the sum of $67,925,100, which is the full amount necessary for the fiscal year 2026 general fund budget, July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. To meet said appropriation, the following funding sources and amounts will be raised and transferred from: parking meter receipts reserve, 350 grand, OPEB stabilization, 100 grand, stabilization, 200 grand, free cash, 100 grand, raise and appropriate $67,175,100. This is going to take a majority vote. When we get there, do I have a second? A second. All right, so this is the discussion portions, the big elephant in the room. I think the other 3 on there are pretty straightforward. I don't want to speak for you, but I don't foresee there's going to be a whole lot of discussion on those 3 enterprise items as we discussed, kind of take care of themselves. So, some ways we've done this in the past is page by page. Is that what makes sense to folks, and taking notes upon each budget on what we might think would be cost savings, and then, you know, not taking necessarily a vote or a recommendation on each of those cost savings until you get to the end, and then we can kind of do an overview on what we've thought of, and then narrow those down. Does that sound like an amiable process? Okay.
What page?
It's actually, I mean, the synopsises start on 44. Oh, wait, 40, yeah, 44.
All right.
But that's, I mean, that's a short way of doing it because again, we can only, just to remind folks, every department here, we can only vote on the total of two items, salary and wages total and expenses total. We can pretend all we want. We can say, well, I don't think you need this person, or I don't think you need these paper supplies. We don't get to decide how the departments use the money. We have two items per budget. And that's salary and wages and expenses. It kind of in the way when we go to full council, some of these we're able to rifle through pretty quick if there's no objections. There hasn't been any brought up thoughts on specifics. So that will be my other thing I'd posture you. Do we want to look at it in a summary form, or do we want to look at it page by page and then have an opportunity to break each one of these down? Or do we want to hit up the one, like go through, and if something gets red flagged in your brain, we can flip to that page and
I like that.
go over that, like that one?
Well, yeah, that's fine with me. Looking through this, which we've done, or which we've done in the last three meetings,
Sure.
I don't see much more that can be cut. The mayor's done pretty much the work for us, as far as, I mean, every department seems as you know,
Mhm.
I suppose we can to go in depth, but I don't know how necessary that is.
Yeah, well, a general question would be, did anybody have any issues, anything? I think you kind of say there were no real issues. Except there's one department that's still
Right.
dealing with their issues, so we probably don't even bother to talk about that tonight, because there's still another meeting to go with them.
Well, well, you know, not to pursue it, but I don't know where they're gonna go. I mean, there's no money to give them, so,
I mean, I guess I'll renege on my offer and maybe we can just go through real quick. Start at 66 is city council. That's the first budget on here. The ones before that are revolving accounts. We don't really vote on those because that's just more of a report. So there's nothing really to be like, we can be like, yay, they made that much money. But we can't really be like, why didn't you make more? Or less. So what I think I'll do is I'll just go like budget by budget and just kind of like we're probably, like I said, we're gonna end up doing hopefully even more condensed once we get to city council, right, like full city council. We can just be like, are there any thoughts on the first budget? Of course, city council, yay, we want to vote on our own. But we have it broken up into salaries and wages and then expenses. We
Well,
can see.
That number is gonna drop because there's a vacancy for a couple of months, so technically, but won't be that much, but
Right, we'll save a cut, but I don't think we should budget for the vacancy.
no. I'm saying,
I hope, you know what I mean? I hope they stay exact.
Today, then we'll save some money.
We'll free cash this year from a couple of vacancies. So, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's literally the 13 counselors. Salary for the administrator, which is one full-time employee. I don't really know. And maybe a little bit of overtime is built in there.
And that salary went up 10,000.
It. Why isn't that in there? Next year. Where are you seeing it? I'm not seeing 25.
Summary.
Oh, back in the full summary.
Where are you at? You're still on 66 down the bottom. Is that?
44.
Oh,
So the department went up, right, from 25 to 26, like 10 grand.
yeah.
Don't know what that. Is it the city clerk? I think it's,
Salary.
yes, I believe it's the clerk. I mean, it's only showing one administrator. And I don't imagine that that person made $10,000 less last year.
I'm assuming they split some of the other costs with the other two people in the clerk's office.
Maybe it was broken out that way last year.
Because so you could argue that some of the other people in the office do some of the council work when the
Sure.
administrator's not there and that sort of stuff.
Alright. Oh, yeah, I see that now, yeah. Change, that's up for discussion if you want. If there,
Just noticing.
obviously their expenses budget got cut like a lot did. This came out of the legal, of course, again, we don't tell them where they end up spending their money. But the idea is to pull it out of legal. They may not need it. I do know that, it's a change from a few years ago was the utilization of the city council to use city attorneys. We had wanted our own, which we did get per se, but not everything that we need to necessarily bring up has to go through our council attorney. If we can already if the city's already got a decision on it,
Right.
it's a legal opinion. So I don't know what the actuals are on that for this year. We don't have that as far as up until now. I know that Kathy couldn't make it last time and I told her that was fine. If there were to be a question about that, then we could bring that up at the next meeting. If anybody has any questions about that, as far as what's been spent up until that point, unless to either Stephen or
I don't think that Penny has been used from legal.
from our legal.
I can look
Okay.
up, pretty sure it hasn't been because that really would have benefited the student if you need to get your own attorney. Which we
Right. Right, for a couple weird things, yeah.
Reviews. Regularly, the city attorney for all the questions that anyone had about the open meeting laws.
Mhm.
I've asked the attorney about the zoning questions.
Yep.
What-
Okay. So I mean, I think that's a smart cut for me for now. And again, if we ended up needing a supplement for some extraneous circumstance, but I don't think getting rid of it entirely is smart. So cutting it, 60% down.
Yep.
Pretty good. But yeah, I'll make a note that if you guys want to inquire about that increase in the salary portion, even just to get clarification onto why that was, if they changed over where partially it was funded or whatnot.
I'm also curious how much was spent from meetings and seminars, since it's 500 per counselor, but if some people don't use it, maybe it could be changed so that it's like 1,000 max per person, or I don't know.
Right.
I know at my first year that I used it. I did not use it this year. But it's not used, but.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not to say there couldn't be something in there that says don't budget for all 13, budget for half each year. Because you're never really gonna have, well, in theory, you're not gonna replace more than half at any one time. I don't know. If that's a suggestion to,
Oh, it's not used to.
right, I mean, it's not used as a free cash, but
Right, I think if you start taking it out of the budget though, then you're permanently
Right.
taking it out. So if you don't want to be able to attend meetings or seminars,
yeah,
then you're kind of
That's-
affecting future councils.
like yin and yang, right?
So it's not very much money.
No,
Yeah,
Mhm.
or more.
if it's not used, then who cares?
Then that little bit goes back.
I was thinking like if some people don't use their 500, then it could be up to 1,000 per.
For somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I think ultimately, I've never been told that, like, I've only got $500 for seminars. Like, it's just, I think, a round figure. And that,
Actual cost more.
yeah, there was actual opportunities for
Yeah, you end up taking money out of your own pocket, but it's well spent.
In the MMA conference wiped out my 500.
All right, then we can move on to the executive. Looks like there's a decrease of 8% in the salaries. 9% increase in the expenses, which seemed to have ran higher a couple of years ago, then dropped. And then, so now that it's almost like one of those things where, like I said before, if you're not really getting an increase because you're kind of getting part of what used to be spent back.
And you're still not up.
Even if it looks like it is on, numbers on paper. It's a 9% increase from last year,
It's a 1%
but it's a,
1% increase from last year. It's a confusing thing where it's,
9% on expenses.
yeah, but it's 1% on the page 67, like, and it's going from 14,000 to 15,000. It's like listed, I think there's an error the way it's listed on 44. Unfortunately, I think there's
That's true.
a few errors like that.
It's okay. Yeah, I think it's a decimal point, probably, right? Just moved over. 14 to 15, 30, yeah, 14, 15, yeah, yep. And it's definitely more like what a 10% increase, almost a 9%, right? Isn't that what the other one said, 9%?
It was from,
No, I'm saying the 1.1 is definitely wrong. The 9, it is like a 9% increase for the expenses budget.
oh, okay.
Yeah, from 14 to 15, 30 is almost 10, yeah. But again, like I mentioned,
Considerably less than the.
considerably less than few every year prior. So. And I know we say stuff, you probably sent them to us in email too, didn't you? Or maybe next year, when the state pushes us forward, is the 3/4 mark, getting the 3/4 actuals. Right. I know we don't have those because we're not head of, right? Are we at like 50, like going by, what is that, be like a 50% or? I'm assuming you do it quarterly, right? Quarterly updates. And we're not gonna have 3/4 numbers because it's literally just today closing. Yeah, exactly. Right. So if we had, I mean, I honestly, I don't want to, you guys, but I think we're gonna have to. Just with what we're facing. Whether it's our regular, just keep our regular council meeting. I was hoping to skip that one like we were able to last year. in the middle of May, but I think we'll probably need it. But I think those would be very helpful, even if it's the 50% mark. Whatever we could get off of these budgets. Because what we can look back at what the last years were. We can look back at what 24 was, 23 was, but we can't see what we've already spent to have kind of a comparison for it. Because as we've seen the volatility, even when we do, and I'm glad you guys did a wonderful job giving us the like 4-year look back, which we've been asking for a number of years, and we'd only get like a 1-year look back, which wasn't very helpful. But we can see the volatility, and especially in the prior years, some of what would happen is you've got the yins and yangs of what happened because of COVID dollars. But now that we're a few years out from that in normal budgeting again, even though some things like ARPA money and ESSER funds and things like that were from that are going away, we can see what a more normalized budget and usage is. So I don't know if that's something that we could get in the next 2-3 weeks for as many departments as possible. Just that I think that would be helpful. At least it would be for me. If you guys don't want them, I don't care. But I mean, we don't have to.
No, if you can get helpful, why not? This is not gonna be that hard for you.
No, it's all in the
Right.
computer. It's just
Right.
getting it out of the computer in a
Sure.
format that makes sense.
Right. Right. And that's just why I think like if we're trying to pare down whatever we can. Not that I agree with statements earlier that this has been pared down really well. And I think a lot of this has been spread out throughout a lot of the budgets to try to get us to where we can exist.
But you're thinking maybe expense numbers would help us look at it,
Some of them,
Yeah.
and again, if things need to be requested at the end of the year, 9 months out of the year, and we got to do like a small increase request, that's one thing. I'm just, it's tight. It's tight across the board and everyone's feeling it. So I don't know that we're going to come up with any magical solution from looking at these. I appreciate your willingness to throw the extra time into that. But I don't know.
I don't know.
We might find something.
I would be surprised with the cuts in the expense lines
Yeah.
that we would find. I mean, based on what we heard from the department heads,
Yeah.
people didn't seem exactly thrilled or that would be easy to do the cuts that were already made. So I just would be really surprised that we would see departments showing underspent and to see their salaries. I don't know. I just would be surprised if we.
I would too, and that's why I was kind of waffling on whether or not to bother having you guys spend the time or us spend the time.
No, because most the argument is if we could cut what?
What are we gonna get?
$150,000, two grand off the budget. I mean, is that really gonna make a
Right.
difference?
Right, we're actually.
We're looking to
probably spend more time.
trying to find 50 grand, which we know we're not gonna do, so.
Yeah.
Is it worth the time and the effort to try to find?
It is true.
We're looking for, we're looking for 50-cent pieces.
Right. That is very true as well. Well, then before I make that formal request to you even bother doing that, how about we go through the rest of the lines and see if we think that it's anywhere fruitful? How about that? Does that make sense? We've got the chief of staff line next. Essentially the salary. Not a whole lot of expenses. And economic development. It's like. A lot to write home about. And knowing that a significant portion of that may be cut from feds. Not always great.
What's that?
I've said, knowing that some of that money is possibly or will be cut from the feds is not something we look forward to.
Well, yeah, well, I don't want to go there. I mean.
It's the way we've had it structured. Yeah.
It's also the discrepancy, the one on page 44 is the right one. The change.
6 and then minus 10.
Yeah,
BC,
like the 73 chart is the percent change is not the right one. The one on page 44 is.
73?
page,
Yeah.
So that's not the one to look at. The one on page 44 is the one that's.
That,
Said,
that one. Right, that mean that the 1% as opposed to the minus 10%? Is that what you're looking at?
it's 514, the one says 6, negative 10, 4.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. They're already taking a hit. On expenses, 10%, it's not.
Everybody's taking a hit on
Of
it.
course. All right, we've got the assessor's office first. I don't know why we have no accounting and audit. That skips here somewhere. Oh, it's just next. All right. So we skipped the assessors.
How'd that happen?
Just one page off, but. Well, those two match up.
Oh,
It's good.
Because when that happens.
I mean, we got it explained to us kind of the theory behind decrease in expenses. But still, it's a big cut when other departments are talking about it.
Oh, that's because we're gonna be using less of outside
Right.
source.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. It's a great cost savings. You could in-source a business manager, save a lot of money. Food for thought. Food for thought.
Say what?
Huh?
kind of ironic that the assessors have been doing the most work as far as getting some revenue going.
Yeah.
They're just taking a big hit for the work. Thank you. You know, but that's the ironic part of this, you know?
Yeah, again, the percentages for accounting aren't. They're pretty good.
We good with the assessor?
Yeah.
Counting,
It's close, but. As long as the actual number is being asked for is the same.
Huh. That's changed. That's not quite the same. Is it?
The percentages in little boxes. The accurate ones, I didn't, as opposed to the ones.
The summaries.
Okay.
Why?
Because they were adjusted later on the printing.
Some of them are,
So-
some of them are backwards. And some of the ones in the beginning are actually.
Percentage lessons actually on the boxes.
Well, it's helpful to know, so.
Boxes are good, but I think that's the-
Okay.
Right.
Any questions on these?
No, we know we hired folks, right?
Right? That's why I said, I don't know if this is productive, like line by line when I mean, we need to do line by line, right? But it's like,
Hopefully people flagged it if we went through the whole discussion, if there's, right, if there's anything. I don't have any proof for this.
yeah, I don't, I mean, we've talked about these a little bit. When you see something that pops up like it's not, like treasurer collector, right? You see something like a 30% jump. But what people don't see, it can be very easy to be like, well, they got a 30% increase.
Yeah, but look back.
Exactly.
Right.
Look back at where it was in 24 or 25, it's nearly half of what it had been previously, and it's only going up, 25%, 29% from there. I mean, more or less the balancing act that comes along with it.
Right.
It's some overinflated budgets and we got some underinflated ones. Oh, tax title looks like. Just leave it at that. Yep, legal, labor and city. Again, these might be, we've asked for this in the past. These might be a couple of the departments where we'd be like, well, what did we actually use? Right, we've asked for that. We obviously had a very, very high legal line. A few years ago. But
That would be good to see.
yeah, do you, without having to have you go through that work, off the top of your head,
I'll tell you what it is inside.
that maybe it's just a one question, you don't have to dig in. I guess it's not 126,000.
Date for it. No.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
So I mean, actuals for 2024 totaled between the two, we're looking at like $378,000 plus. Can't imagine why you're here.
Fully expended.
We spent what?
It's fully expended. This year?
The 95,000 that was budgeted
Yeah, we did.
for labor. How about for city? 150 grand?
The appropriation of 150,000, probably spent 134,676.
Is a lawsuit covered with that part or is that separate?
So we've been paying for that right along.
All right.
Out of that,
Okay.
and I think a lot of that's paid, but we have 15,323 to go. I talked more than a couple of times. So we're not, doesn't like that year over, I'm not feeling like that's gonna be okay good this year. It's gonna be close.
So I'm presuming that the labor being fully expended this year, I know there were multiple contracts, 3-year contracts done, so that's gonna be something that fluctuates anyway, right?
We had three unions. We did police, fire and dispatch, and we did bring, attorneys aren't always brought in to be here for all of the negotiations.
Mhm.
Every union, but they were there, full time for 2 of those. So it was a little bit, so I can see why that one, I don't know which ones are up next year.
And so where does the majority, just for people's sake, where does the majority of the rest of the legal labor expenses go to when you're not?
It could be a personnel issue.
Yeah, grievances, that sort of stuff.
You know, we frequently, when we will review contracts. If there are any questions, we do a lot of, we've done several MOAs, MOUs with people, and he reads over everything. And yeah, anything personnel will. Yeah, but I bet a lot of it was contract. If they came for hours. You know, they were here for hours at a time. Okay, well, I mean, you know.
No, those are expenses, be careful.
Does anybody else need one of these?
Good share. Consolidation.
Here we got, now we're at.
Human resources on 86, yeah, HR.
Salary increase.
On the salaries, probably normal. Way down the expenses. Mhm.
Point,
3,000 less on the expenses, right?
there are full timers.
So pretty much like 20, yeah, like 24%, by the way. I gotta be honest with you folks, I think, as you guys alluded to earlier, it's gonna be real hard to find anything of substance,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
and
Yeah, when you look at a $67 million budget.
Yeah.
You know, cutting a grand or two, it's not gonna save anybody.
Yeah,
from which.
so far I'm having a hard time finding that.
Yeah,
I mean. The big cuts are expenses. And it's like, you know.
Yeah.
Use your scrap paper, right on the other side, you know?
I'm just wondering if we're just gonna spin our wheels.
Yeah, because
The rest of the evening, I mean, there's,
Thing would be,
I guess so many of these anyway, and
Times out, and
I didn't know if any of you were gonna come in as miracle workers, but, you know. A lot of the, like we said, almost every department's cut.
Yeah.
In one way, shape or form. They may get an increase because of contractual salary increases, but they're getting cut off.
2 employees, well, and then you added one, an IT, correct, or you cut IT?
No,
Oh, yeah.
no, we have the person in IT, and the person in the operating budget, the person's adding 19, the person's adding in 2000. Okay, so that's a lot of it, +2. There is a new person in water, but that is not under the operating budget. So. That's how you budget guys,
Right.
but still.
And that's on account of the new person in water
Water,
is the,
we can't afford to lose any folks in water
Right.
and sewer, and so there was a real cry for extra assistance there. And that's what we needed. Did that. So, but that was on the enterprise fund.
and then licensing, which is something that was very well deserved, right?
Right.
planning department salary went up 10%. But that's also $10. That just- Oh.
Well, planning is, in my opinion, understaffed anyway, you know, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you shaved essentially 3 million off of the departmental ask, correct?
Some
The
of that,
departmental ask before the mayor got the
Oh,
budget.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other, well, the other part was just the percentage change.
yes.
Well, you know, if everyone got what they wanted, a lot more people would not like it because their taxes would go up so high.
People work, I have no idea, people work really, really. They don't have enough. I can't say enough about how much effort people put in every time.
I mean, the cost of everything altogether, I think has to be recognized, you know, and said that when we're talking our operating budget in 2022 is 55 million. And now we're looking at with cuts, 67 million. It's 12 million. I mean, that's probably what, 20% increase in 4 years, 3 years. Really?
Most of that is insurance.
Right. So it's like, what do you do? You know, I mean, you sit out there, you can pitch a fit. Like, I don't like it. My tax bill goes up every year, even if my assessment went up and I was like, woohoo. And then the taxes went down. I was like, great, but my assessment went up. To cover it, like, you know, it's in that way a little bit of a shell game, but like when both have to go up, you know, you feel it and everyone feels it. But to operate a city, we just said, how do you get $12 million 4 years? Don't know.
You get to find the home.
Practice. But it's the reality of things. I mean, we might be hitting harder stretches later, but. Good. Go for it.
As department head, budget cuts that I've been talking with my counterparts in the town have been very difficult, and very challenging, and I will say it from my department. Mayor has done everything in her power, to make sure that the minimizing the impacts to the department fundings are kept small, but, you know, nobody holds it against the administration or anything because, you know, it's what we have to do. There's just so much money. And so although we may not be happy about it, we, you know, Mayor can rest assured, none of the department heads are taking it personal, from the mayor. I just want to say that because I think she conversations behind the closed doors are, you know, they're pointed sometimes. These are, you know, we've got to make some difficult decisions, but at the end of the day, she's doing everything she can to make sure that every department is taken care of. And I'll go out in public to say that. So, thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. I think it's important for folks to hear that it's not, you know, hear the like hyperbolic statements of like, well, what do you value in your society and what's more important? It's like, well, again, we got to go back to this kind of like the reduce, reuse, recycle circle, right? Like it's a Venn diagram of things. It's, you can't just, you know, I made very clear that I'm very pro school from the very beginning. And I fought hard for the school budgets that are there, but this one I can't see happening. It's just not going to happen. And though I would love it to, what I'm not willing to sacrifice personally is giving up the rest of our infrastructure that makes it so that schools can function in our district. You can't have schools without roads. You can't have roads without police. You can't have, without fire. You can't have without DPW, like without, and even the smaller departments that some people might be like, well, you could come from them. Well, then what kind of city do we live in? We live in a boring ass city of like people just bouncing balls up and down like a wrinkle in time. Like that's robots. Why should we exist? Like we can't have anything that makes us individuals and part of a society where we can, have things like cleanup days where we have people volunteer. We can have people come in to city council and volunteer, for lack of a better word. Like if we don't have any of the other things going on, then what's the point? We're going to be, if we spend all of our money in one pocket, then we're going to what? Sorry, folks, unpopular opinion. We're going to raise a bunch of educated people to be boring and have nothing to do is what we're going to do. So, yay. Sounds like a awesome, sad, gray, beige 22nd century for the rest of us. But, I don't know. That's just me. Nobody's happy about it. Let's put it out. Nobody is.
We've also seen, I think, pretty responsible use of all the other revolving funds.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not huge pots of money sitting around in any other department revolving fund to take from either. Those balances are just not kept that high.
Yeah. But to not, as we're just seeing here, like quarter of the way through, like this is just, honestly, I feel like this is just belaboring a process that we're not gonna be able to, find anything. Really, I mean, we're gonna be able to find pittance.
Forward really responsible budgets, and the mayor has double, triple, quadruple checked with the finance department. It's gone, a lot of eyes have gone into this over the past. A lot of questions asked, and we've also gotten 3-year histories, which is a kind of a new thing.
Yeah.
It's cool on a lot of this stuff. So we, going back and trying to make the best educated choices on these funds.
I was racking my brain looking at this. And I couldn't come up with anything that was of substance at all. And I was hoping that maybe, like I said, there was a miracle worker that would be like, hey, well, when I saw this, X, Y, and Z came to my brain. I'd be like, that's great. It's not appearing that way. And I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy, but the realist that,
I was gonna say, it's not doom, it's just being real.
yeah,
It's gonna be a tough month coming up, but I think, as Chief just said, we can know in our hearts and in our minds that this is what it is. And we don't have to second guess ourselves and that sort of stuff, or feel like, we're doing something wrong because, there's nothing left.
right. And I don't want to have like, yeah, could we make drastic cuts to one place or another? Sure, we could make up for the shortfalls, but we've done that in the past and look where that got us. That got us into a pit. And maybe to be frank to the history of folks in this city, had we not done that and been a little bit, I mean, I'm talking, this goes back decade anyway.
Well, the $65 million bonds is, says something.
Bonds are big.
Bonds are big.
Yeah. But I
No offense.
would say that, I would say that there were some poor decisions made some years ago to try to appease one thing or another. And it was a different time then, but it did, I remember watching it unfold where it did become a very big pitting one department against another. And that was not helpful in the long run. And I think we're now having to backfill, essentially try to backfill what was lost. And we've seen that both in capital and in operating. So trying to make up for misuse of funds in the past is not easy.
Mhm. And as bad as this is, as everyone's been warning us,
Yeah.
there's gonna be no picnic next year either.
Correct.
So, you know,
Right, that's a good, lack of.
you know, so
And we're not the only ones.
Right, correct. I think that's important to note as well.
And it's Massachusetts, and that could be an issue. This particular administration in Washington.
So I would posture that I'm gonna say we skip the rest of the line item stuff. I don't think it's gonna be worth our while. We do have a meeting on the 20th scheduled. If in the next, let's say, where do I have to cancel that by? If we were to cancel it, I don't know, somewhere like the 13th. Let's just say by first, the 9th is next Friday, right? So if you end up having questions or thoughts
Our
or
next meeting is on
the
the
20th,
20th.
yeah. So if by the 9th, you don't have anything that sticks out to you as,
What about that Monday, it's the 12th, is that too late?
to send this in or to cancel it,
Uh,
and we could do the 12th. That's still
I'll
8
give
days in
people a
advance.
another weekend to look at this
Sure, all
over.
right, let's do the 12th. If by the 12th, you know, I mean, you send in whatever you got for questions, suggestions, maybe you find something staggering, like I said, doubt it's gonna happen, but give you a little extra time to, if you want to really overly scrutinize what's going on and try to find, you know, 20 grand. In a reasonable way. Then we can have our continued discussion on that. On the 20th. Otherwise, I would say, I don't know how I do this formally because it's always weird to me because these are subcommittees. But like, I would say other than that would be at this time, I think we're supposed to put a recommendation here, even though it's just a motion. Would we put a recommendation that we approve that number
Contingent on,
contingent on if we end up holding a meeting? Like, so we're approving it now, but we leave it open to putting on our May 20th agenda if we need to have it, that we could, I mean, because again, it's just a recommendation, so we could change the recommendation, right? I don't think there's any, you know, 48 hours.
If something unforeseen happens between
Right.
now and then.
Right,
This meeting next week,
correct. You know, that could
yeah.
take care of a lot of things, in certain ways. But so that would be my idea, is to have that as our motion for the general budget as presented. And unless we come up with something by May 12th. Cool. It's not even really a motion, it's just a suggestion. All right, so.
It's your suggestion.
All right, so we'll put that down as a positive recommendation pending.
and then none of this should be coming up at next week's meeting. That
Well, yeah,
meeting is specific for 7 items.
I know, but
Oh, no, our next meeting, it's not on the agenda. We can't discuss this. It's not.
No, I'm talking about, he was mentioning next week's meeting, that's just.
I thought you were meaning a school meeting.
that's what I was talking about.
Oh,
I was trying to be, I was trying to be stealth without, you know.
I just,
Well, you know, it's already as environment as it is, so I'm trying to stay as, you know.
yeah, right. All right, so we can go to the water fund, sewer fund, GSET enterprise funds.
We need to vote on the first one, or are we all in agreement?
I think we kind of just did.
Just did, okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, is that I?
Yeah, I.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah.
In favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, it's hard because they're just recommendations essentially, but. 25.
14, I think, you're.
Want to get to that one, 14?
Yeah.
City council upon recommendation of the mayor to appropriate the sum of 2.840089 million for the FY 26 water enterprise fund. Move that it be ordered that the sum of $2,177,109 be appropriated for the FY 26 operations of the water enterprise, and further appropriate the sum of $662,980 to be transferred to the general fund for indirect costs, for a total appropriation to the water enterprise fund of $2,840,089 to be raised from water user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1, 2025 and ending June 30, 2026.
Second.
Is there discussion on the use of our water funds?
I think the mayor pretty much talked about it earlier and kind of said it as it was.
Again, these are enterprise funds. They balance out at nothing. All right, when they're all said and done. So all those in favor of that? City council upon recommendation of the mayor to appropriate the sum of $3,895,664 for the FY 26 sewer enterprise fund. Move that it be ordered that the sum of $3,187,199 be appropriated for the FY 26 operations of sewer enterprise, and further appropriate the sum of $708,465 to be transferred to the general fund for indirect costs, for a total appropriation of the sewer enterprise fund of $3,895,664 to be raised from sewer user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1st, 25, ending June 26.
That's two, didn't we?
May sound like a weird question, but I just want to ask this because the way this is written. Just want to look back real quick at the last one. Is it the same way? It was 14, you said, right? All right, so I know these things have to be parsed out with indirect costs and such, right? Were you talking like fringe here? Yeah. It all comes from the same place, right? So if we were paying the fringe for this $708,000, it would go on our tax bill, essentially.
Yes.
But we're paying the $708,000 out of our sewer bill, so we're paying it through a sewer bill anyway. So doesn't this seem silly? Like,
Yeah.
right, it's just like, I just want to make sure I was getting that like completely straight, like, we're paying for it either way. It's not like, you know.
Queen of,
Right.
right. Government finance.
Yes, okay, I just wanted to make that clear, and I wasn't missing something. Anyway, is there any other discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
I would like my taxes and my rate to go down, thank you. City council upon recommendation of the mayor to appropriate the sum of $2,390,826 for the FY 26 GSET Enterprise Fund. Move that it be ordered that the sum of $2,225,826 be appropriated for the FY 26 operations of the GSET Enterprise, and further appropriate the sum of $165,000 to be transferred to the general fund for indirect costs, for a total appropriation to the GSET Enterprise Fund of $2,390,826 to be raised from GSET user rate receipts for the fiscal year starting July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026.
Second.
All right. Discussion on this one. I do appreciate, while I will add to what I just said before, that while the taxes are not user-based, the rates on sewer water, like Ginny was talking about earlier, you can control a little bit. So, all right, maybe I don't hate that.
The light bulb just came on, you know?
I just wait a minute. I mean, 'cause I don't have to, so I was like, oh, I'd rather than pay the indirect cost of my taxes. But, oh wait, I didn't say all those in favor of that one. And then we have, The city council upon recommendation of the mayor to establish budgets for revolving funds pursuant to MGL chapter 44, section 53E.5, our favorite. Moves that it be ordered to authorize the revolving funds budgets in accordance with MGL chapter 44, section 53E.5 for the fiscal year 2026. Receipts received but not expended in fiscal year 2026 shall be carried over to fiscal year 2027 unless otherwise prescribed in MGL.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this thing we have to do every year? All right, all those in favor?
I said it before, I'll say it again, thank you. Department heads, city hall, so I mean, this is a good product. I know people aren't happy, I know there's a lot of, it's a good project, it's a good product, you know, you put a lot of work into it. I know the entire staff here did, so it makes our job easier when it's all right there in front of us, and there's no questions, you know, to wondering and that sort of stuff, so thank you for all the good you do. Even if we don't always agree.
It definitely is a lot easier when it's, you know, I don't want people to think that it's just like a rubber stamp at this point or anything like that. Like it's,
The work's been done.
right, it's really great actually to not have to put in that much scrutiny when like we used to find really obvious things. And that was kind of sad. Because if you, it's like at one point you're like, do we need to have this board essentially look it back over? And it's like, well, yeah, sometimes you do. But if you've got, you know, a good responsible start, you don't have to worry about that so much. Oh, yeah, there's no public comment. No, that's long gone. Yeah, so our next meeting will be May 20th, 2025. 6 p.m. City Hall meeting room right here, second floor, and Zoom hybrid unless otherwise posted. To continue these deliberations and recommendations if needed. As I said, we talked about May 12th. See what's up. And if
Perfect timing, Aaron.
if May 12th, you know, there's nothing glaring that, you know, you guys have come up with, then we will probably cancel that meeting and just use the recommendations we had tonight to go to full council on the 21st. If for some reason something comes up again at next week's meeting, or in the meantime that we need to deliberate about, then we can have that meeting, but I'll let you all know on the 12th.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry to interrupt.
So public comments over. No, I'm just joking. Go ahead. What's up?
I have this paper that you can pass around, because I have one of it on Mark Snow's expenses. Somebody asked about that. I have one copy of his expenses over the last couple of years.
You know who somebody was.
Now he was through.
Photo of it.
Yeah. I can make a photo. Somebody, I think Michael asked him.
Thank you.
Council Tronzo asked about it, so.
Yeah, there was no question.
I can make a photocopy. It'll take.
Can we make 5?
Oh, here's another. We have an extra.
We have 2 copies.
We'll make 4.
Save
Paper's expensive.
Run a little bit of paper.
It's what it's no, I got cut.
You no longer buying by the reams, you're buying by the sheets.
I have to reuse that paper somewhere else too. All right, with that, I'd take a motion to adjourn. Took so
Sorry.
long.
I don't know. I feel you've been doing the seconds, so I didn't want to.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And our meeting's adjourned at 8:34 PM.
That's amazing.